Hey there movie lovers, welcome back to Rocky Watches Movies. Today we're heading into the dangerous world of the 1981 James Bond adventure For Your Eyes Only. After the space-age spectacle of Moonraker, this film brought Bond back down to earth with a grittier tone and intense action. Packed with daring stunts, memorable villains and one of Roger Moore's most grounded performances as 007, there's plenty going on behind the scenes that even devoted fans may not know. So grab your ski gear, watch out for hidden dangers, and join us as we uncover 20 things you never knew about For Your Eyes Only. Following Moonraker, Cubby Broccoli turned back to Ian Fleming's work to ground Bond in a more traditional style. Although the film is titled For Your Eyes Only, Ian Fleming's story makes up only part of the screenplay. The movie borrows elements from two separate James Bond short stories and even lifts a scene from one of Fleming's earlier novels. The storyline involving Bond investigating the murder of the Havelocks and crossing paths with their revenge-driven daughter Melina comes from For Your Eyes Only. Much of the remaining plot is drawn from another story, Risico. Meanwhile, the scene in which Bond and Melina are dragged across open water was taken from the novel Live and Let Die. The filmmakers looked to real-world espionage for inspiration. The sinking of the St. George's and the race to recover the ATAC device were inspired by the 1968 sinking of Soviet submarine K-129 and the CIA's secret recovery mission Project Azorian. The operation led to the construction of the USNS Hughes Glomar Explorer, built for the mission by Howard Hughes, a friend of Cubby Broccoli. Project Azorian recovered only part of the submarine, much like Bond's mission to retrieve the ATAC, which also ends in only partial success. The underwater Greek temple scenes were filmed in the Bahamas. However, Carol Bouquet's underwater close-ups had to be shot on a dry soundstage at Pinewood Studios due to sinus problems that prevented her from diving. Lighting effects, wind machines and slow-motion photography created the underwater illusion, while breathing bubbles were added in post-production using Alka-Seltzer effects layered over the footage. Roger Moore struggled with vertigo while filming the rock climbing scenes. Although stuntman Rick Sylvester handled the most dangerous shots, Moore still had to perform close-ups on a cliff face while climbing towards St. Cyril's Monastery. To cope with the nerves, the Bond star would take a small amount of Valium and drink a tall glass of beer before filming. Moore was actually expected to step down after Moonraker, as his contract had expired, prompting auditions for a new James Bond. Among the actors considered was future Bond star Timothy Dalton, who ranked highly with the producers. Dalton had previously been approached for On Her Majesty's Secret Service, but declined, believing he was too young for the role. He also turned down For Your Eyes Only, feeling the character had become a little too silly. In the end, Roger Moore agreed to return as 007 though. Despite strict safety measures, For Your Eyes Only became the first Bond film to suffer an on-set fatality. During the ski chase sequence, 23-year-old stuntman Paolo Rigoni was critically injured after becoming trapped beneath an overturned bobsleigh, and he later died in hospital. Tragically, while the scene featured Bond racing down a bobsleigh run on skis, it was someone using the track as intended who lost his life during the stunt. The monks at the Holy Trinity Monastery in Meteora strongly opposed filming, objecting to the violence linked with the Bond franchise. Despite an agreement with the Greek Orthodox Church, they attempted to disrupt production by hanging plastic sheets and laundry around the monastery. There were also suggestions that payment from the producers never reached the monastery, adding to tensions. The dispute escalated to Greece's Supreme Court, which ruled that the monastery's exterior belonged to the Greek people, while the monks controlled only the interiors. Filming continued, with exterior mock-ups built on a nearby mountaintop and interior scenes recreated at Pinewood Studios. At 53, Roger Moore was noticeably older during For Your Eyes Only, prompting a deliberate effort to avoid the issue of Bond romancing much younger women. Melina only responds to Bond after her mission of revenge is complete, while the much younger Bibi Dahl's advances are firmly brushed aside, with Bond offering to buy her an ice cream instead. Ironically, although Melina was presented as far more mature, Carol Bouquet was only just 1 year older than Lynn Holly Johnson during filming. Co-writer Richard Maybaum also felt director John Glenn mishandled Bond and Melina's romance, believing Bond should have been pursuing her throughout the film. After Bond's Lotus Esprit Turbo self-destructs, he is forced to escape in Melina Havelock's yellow Citroën 2CV, reinforcing the film's move away from gadgets and towards Bond relying on his instincts. 4 2CVs were specifically modified with stronger engines for the chase scenes, while one featured a rotating roof plate to help film the car's rollover stunt. Bond's helicopter ride back to MI6 turns deadly when a familiar bold villain in a wheelchair takes remote control of the aircraft. Pilot Mark Wolfe handled the aerial work, while stuntman Martin Grace doubled for Roger Moore. Since flying inside a building was too dangerous, effects supervisor Derek Meddings used a miniature structure beside a real warehouse to create the illusion to make it appear that Wolfe was flying inside it. In truth, Wolfe was actually flying behind the miniature and past the warehouse. The helicopter then appears to be on course for a deadly crash inside the warehouse, but the sequence was actually filmed using a full-size mock-up mounted on rails rather than a freely flying aircraft. Roger Moore was uneasy with the scene in which Bond kicks Emil's Mercedes over a cliff, feeling it suited Ian Fleming's Bond and Sean Connery's portrayal more than his own. Since Roger Moore took over as James Bond, efforts had been made to shape 007 around his own personality, but this scene marked an important return to grittier, more Fleming-inspired versions of the character. One idea aimed at preserving Moore's lighter take on Bond involved 007 throwing Emil's trademark dovepin into the Mercedes, causing it to plunge over the cliff edge. But the concept was dismissed as too implausible. In the end, Moore agreed to film the scene as written, and it remains one of 007's most ruthless moments. The Havelock's parrot, Max, once belonged to former Bond girl Diana Rigg before she gave it to stuntwoman Sid Child, who doubled for her in The Avengers. Child then doubled for Carol Bouquet and Cassandra Harris in For Your Eyes Only. To create Max's talking scenes, Child placed peanut butter on the bird's beak, while actor Jack Hedley supplied the voice in post-production. Roger Moore, aiming for a more serious tone in the film, disliked the parrot revealing the ATAX location and the comedic ending involving a prank call with Margaret Thatcher. Max would go on and make a cameo appearance in The Living Daylights in 1987. Bernard Lee was still alive when production for Your Eyes Only began. Despite battling stomach cancer, the longtime M actor attempted to film a scene, but the strain proved too much and he had to withdraw. After Lee's death in January 1981, Cubby Broccoli chose not to recast M out of respect. Instead, M was said to be on leave, with Q, Sir Frederick Gray and M's Chief of Staff Bill Tanner taking over parts of his role. It was second time lucky for Carol Bouquet. After missing out on the role of Holly Goodhead in Moonraker to Lois Chiles, she landed the part of the revenge-driven Melina Havelock, hunting her parents' killers with a crossbow. Julian Glover also had better luck this time around, previously shortlisted as a potential Bond before Live and Let Die. He instead appeared here as the villainous Christatos. Although Hector Gonzalez's lavish villa is meant to be near Madrid, the scenes were actually filmed on the Greek island of Corfu. The following car chase involving Bond, Molina and Gonzalez's henchmen was in the village of Pagoy. To make the location resemble a Spanish town, several buildings were painted white. The locals embraced the production, and the village is now home to Spiros Bond 007 Cafe Bar, celebrating Bond's time on the island. For Your Eyes Only also marked Cubby Broccoli's introduction to Pierce Brosnan, thanks to Brosnan's wife, Cassandra Harris, who appeared in the film as a woman Bond seduces for information. Barbara Broccoli took notice of him as a possible successor to the ageing Roger Moore. Although the producers succeeded in casting Brosnan as 007 in 1986, his commitment to Remington Steele forced him to step away from the role. Tragedy then struck in 1991 when Cassandra Harris died from ovarian cancer, meaning she never saw Brosnan finally secure the role of James Bond in June 1994. Blondie were approached to record a song, and the band actually produced a track for the movie, delivering something far more upbeat than the version audiences eventually heard. The issue came down to the producers wanting Blondie to perform a song written by composer Bill Conti instead. Singer Debbie Harry was unhappy with the arrangement, and the band was replaced by Sheena Easton. Easton remains the only Bond-themed singer to appear in a film's title sequence. Title designer Maurice Binder was so taken by her appearance that he insisted she be featured prominently. The Scottish singer slightly tarnished her achievement, though, with an unfortunate mistake. According to Roger Moore, Easton had a lapse in memory during a promotional press tour for the song. She failed to mention the film even once, which greatly frustrated producer Cubby Broccoli. When For Your Eyes Only was released in 1981, it earned $195 million at the box office. Although that was lower than Moonraker's $210 million, it still outperformed The Spy Who Loved Me, providing a major financial boost for United Artists. After Heaven's Gate had pushed the studio close to financial ruin, 007 delivered the success it desperately needed. Not long after the film's release, United Artists was acquired by MGM in a $350 million deal. And there you have it, folks. You now know a little bit more about For Your Eyes Only. If you enjoyed the video, which I presume you did as you got this far, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any future videos coming to Rocky Watches Movies. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.